Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And welcome to Parental Advisory. We are live with our part 2 talking about tax brackets. So Anthony, yesterday we talked about progressive tax brackets. We talked about other tax brackets you should care about that people may not have thought of, what it means to be wealthy, which I thought was interesting. And what we want to do today is touch more on some hypothetical situations to really explain what does it mean? What exactly are you saying? Let's put some numbers behind the stories so people can go, holy shit, I'm paying a lot more taxes than I thought.
Or a lot less, or there's ways to pay a lot less.
True.
And that's why we're a little bit delayed getting going today. One of our superstar enrolled agents, Julia Zai, was helping us out. And I kept on throwing her another hypothetical. I'm like, well, add that in there, because we wanted to add in some foreign tax exclusions and some additional things. And we could have kept going, but we said, you know what, today is going to end soon, and we got to get enough out there. That's one of the things about when you're running, there's really no way to determine your tax liability without running it through a software. So as we were going through doing comparisons, we had to run it through our entire software. So that's what we have some today is some things that we see. So these are some hypotheticals of situations that we see. And, you know, maybe some clients of ours, we change things, obviously, but some typical fact patterns. And these are all what you would call, I think every example we have is somebody who's rich.
Oh.
Okay. Everybody in these hypotheticals is rich. I think the most, they're all making at least 400 as a couple or single in these hypotheticals. And this is why when you look at those tax brackets, it's really not telling you the whole story at all in any sort of means, you know, at all what you end up with. And I think that's one of the things where a lot of young doctors, young attorneys, young professionals, they're looking at this, hey, I know what I can get paid. I can get paid a lot. I can be a doctor. I'll make $400,000 a year. Oh, that means I'll at least have a lot of money. And then when they're looking at it like, wait a second, I thought I was going to have all this money. What happened to it? Where did it go? And then they look at their paycheck and their withholdings, and then they look at their tax return. They didn't get the refund they thought, and maybe they even owe some money.
So we're air quotes rich.
So yeah, you're rich. You're the richest 1% of filers. But then when you really look at it, it doesn't work out so well. And also, you know, if you have to think about it, if you're the richest 1% of tax filers, the chances are you're living in a high cost area. It just statistics. It makes sense.
Right.
You're paid a lot because it costs a lot to be where. So where you're going to find a lot of the rich people are places where the rents are $5,000 a month for some crap hole.
Right.
You know, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, New York City. These are your high cost centers, and so we have some things. We've done some geographic. We have Veronica in San Jose. Then we've moved Veronica to Singapore. Then we have Wendy and Carl. They're living in San Antonio, Texas, which I heard is absolutely beautiful. I haven't been there, but not in the downtown. So there's a little river walk. Looks beautiful. Love to visit. Then we have Rocky Smith, who lives in Naples, Florida.
Lovely.
Naples is I was there this time, and I was there 2 weeks this time last year.
Yeah.
So I'm convincing myself this is my outfit today. I'm wearing a Tommy Bahama, one of the nice little restaurants on 3rd Ave in Naples, downtown Naples, Florida. It's quite something special. So that's where Rocky, maybe I'll run into him. And then we have Stella and Frank Miller, who live on Shelter Island, New York, which is, oh boy. I took the jet skis over from Old Saybrook into Shelter Island.
Yeah.
I was blown away. It made the Connecticut River look like we're backwoods poor people. It made us look really poor. Holy crap, the amount of luxury yachts.
Everything was covered in diamonds.
It looked that way, and then it's you know what you're expecting is that it's flat. Like you think, oh, you're kind of going to this little inlet. You think of Long Island as flat, and it's really not. When you're going in there, that's bluff. So it's like 100 feet on both sides, and so it's like a big river filled with these huge yachts, just huge.
Yep.
That we see maybe one in the Connecticut River all year long, and then they're just lined up, all from around the world.
Like I can picture everything is sparkling, and then when you turn around and look back at Connecticut, it's like polluted and dark and sad.
There is that haze. There's that haze. And then our little boats and like the big boats in my marina are like, wow, sorry, man. Sorry, it's just not going well.
Yep.
Now I'm like, wow, okay, so that's where the world's wealth sort of conglomerates there. So Shelter Island, I thought Stella and Frank, wonderful couple. We've been there a lot of times. And then they go down to Boca during the summer. So we're going to go over, those are the hypothetical people we have.
Okay.
And the first one is we're going to talk about Veronica Johnson. And by the way, if there is a Veronica Johnson, this is who lives in San Jose, strictly coincidental.
Okay.
She works at a hospital. She's an MD. She is single. She has 4 children. She earns $400,000 a year. She has a pretty nasty mortgage. It's kind of pricey to live in San Jose. It's beautiful. I mean, the weather is absolutely gorgeous. Property taxes are horrible. She has 2 children she has to pay childcare for.
Okay.
And that's $22,000 a year, and student loan interest of $15,000.
Wow.
She itemizes, and so what happens for Veronica, okay, and so what she's left over with on her $400,000, and again, the only way to figure this out is you actually have to run everything through, because what happens is that there's phase out of deductions. As your income goes up, the IRS says, well, you don't really need that deduction. We're not going to allow that anymore because you're too rich.
Oh.
Even though in this case, Veronica, she has a net worth of negative $100,000, little equity in her house, but her student loans are still sky high. She's a negative net worth, but the tax code treats her as a rich person, so that her total U.S. tax liability comes in at $99,150.
Wow.
Okay, so that's an effective rate of 25%. However, there's some plus. Her plus we didn't put in here. She owes the state of California some money, too.
Oh, for what?
For California goodness. The top marginal rate in California is 13.3%. So we have her somewhere. We didn't have time to run her software exactly through. She's going to owe about $30,000 to $40,000 to the state of California. Probably about $35,000 to the state of California. Her total tax bill, $130,000. Total income tax bill, $130,000. So there she is. And here she is, a single mom, busting her butt, working crazy.
She's a doctor.
She's a doctor.
Doctors are successful.
And she's making a lot of money, but what she's left over with is barely, and for the house, I was looking at some houses, what she'd be able to buy.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say my house is nicer.
Oh, wow.
I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm kicking the crap out of you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are. It's just not a lot of what is available. And so there's really nothing left over for her. And I think that's one of the big things is the shock a successful doctor must have after all of that. And you're making decent money, you're working so hard, you're adding so much value, and yet you have a tax code that's beating the crap out of you and treating you as if you are a rich person when you're certainly not. And I think people would say, well, I'm not going to cry for her, I guess. I'm like, all right, I guess you don't have to cry for her, but...
Still sucks.
I mean, it sucks. I mean, it's really insulting. Now, one thing I wanted to add, let's assume that Veronica Johnson wasn't an employee of the hospital, but rather a 1099 employee.
That happens quite a bit.
Right.
Right.
Okay, and so what would happen in that case? Now, remember our talk yesterday? Okay.
Social Security and... Medicare.
Yep.
Now she's going to have to pay 15%, right?
She's going to pay the 50%, the other half.
Yep.
So Julia was kind enough to break out her Social Security and Medicare tax that goes into her tax bill, and it's just about $15,000. Okay, that she already paid herself. She's got to go for the other half, self-employed.
Right.
So that's another $15,000 she's got to come up with if she was self-employed. So 1099 doctors really get hammered hard. Not a lot you can do about it. Now, there is going to be a small deduction you can get. You get a deduction for the self-employment tax you do pay, but it's still a really bad deal. That also boosts up your California adjusted gross income.
Yep.
You're getting screwed. It would actually knock it down a little bit. So that'll be a wash. So there is Veronica, hardworking MD. And I think, let's see, what is our tax bracket? That's our 39.6,
yes.
right? And because tax brackets work progressively, it doesn't spring into action for all of her money. It's only that last bit that she's taxed at 39.6% on.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's not, her effective rate is about 25% for Fed, And then her effective rate we think her effective rate for the state would be somewhere between 8 and 10%.
So there's not a lot of loopholes for Veronica.
For Veronica, she really needs, it's when you're a waged employee, there's just not a lot of things that come up. It's so much better to have things in investments. Then you can do some structuring, but all of us, you work hard to get those investments.
Right.
Something she might be able to do is defer some income by putting it into a 401k, but actually in her case, she might be making too much. If she owned her own practice, she might be able to, if she owned her own practice, there'd be a bunch of things she could do. But right now, with the medical industry, the big thing is consolidation. All these docs in their private practice are getting bought out by hospitals. That's the big thing because private firms can't handle those compliance costs. Everything's conglomerating. And so that's something to think about if you're a doc and you're given that, that check that someone's going to say, okay, we'll buy out your practice and give you this. Just be aware, run some of these figures through to see what your net is going to be. And by the way, if they're looking to give you that big payday, and I think you would want to go back to our talk that we had with Bill Loftus.
Yes.
If you do have that big payday, there is a way to take that big payday and defer and not have that horrible tax debt or that horrible thing that will spring up. If someone's looking to buy you out, there might be a way. So go back to what our last our interview with Bill Loftus. So go to parentaladivisoryshow.com and search Bill Loftus, PPLI, some of the things we talked about there. So that is something to think about because a lot of people, man, they just get surprised.
Yeah, and I do feel bad for Veronica, the poor lady. She's working hard. She probably never sees her kids. Thinks she is successful, thinks she's doing well, and then you're in the hole. You're constantly trying to dig yourself out of that hole.
And people just and I think the other part is people give you no sympathy.
No.
What are you complaining about? You're rich.
A doctor.
Yeah, you're a doctor.
Make
You're rich.
$400,000
You have to pay for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's family members who are like, hey, how about the loan ski or something,
All right, now you had made a note here. What if she lives in Singapore?
Right, and this is why we're delayed a little bit today because it's Singapore. She, let's just say that she's the same thing. She's a doctor.
Okay.
A hospital in Singapore wanted to hire a Western doctor. Completely believable, right?
Right.
They're still paying, and Singapore has a pretty nice standard of living, and they're still paying her big bucks. We have a lot of clients in Singapore. They make a decent amount of money. So let's just say she's getting a $400,000 still. What's her tax bill look like now? Ooh, it looks good. It gets a lot better.
Oh.
What comes into place is that we have our foreign income exclusion. So part of her income that she has, we don't have to pay taxes on it. You don't have it there. And it's the worst tax rates that you're missing out on, too. So what we end up with Veronica, and we also lose our social, and Julia knocked out the Social Security. Actually, I think she'd put it back in. I do think I'll have to check with her on that because there is something on that. But essentially her bill, we got down with the foreign tax credit as well. We got her bill down from the $130 she was paying to California IRS to $33,949.
Holy crap.
She saved $100,000 by working overseas.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is you could actually if you're looking to where to work, it's like, well, I need this amount of money to live in California. Make sure when you're going for wage comparisons that you're really doing a wage comparison because you could work, if you get paid less in Singapore at $350,000, that's a better deal. Take it if you like Singapore.
Right.
Obviously, California has some wonderful things offering.
I heard Thailand is beautiful.
That is. And I heard our friend, and I heard that the king of Thailand is a
very wonderful man.
Wonderful man. And I just hope he lives long and prosperous. So that is the difference between Veronica Johnson. This is really the same income, just where she lives and how the vast difference. I mean, talk about a swing of, essentially, her entire swing of what she's paying is her whole federal tax bill.
Right.
By moving to Singapore, it's like it's gone. It's wiped out. She's basically just paying California, even though she's not there.
Right. All I see again is these IRS sharks just swimming under the water, waiting to bite Veronica's legs off.
Right.
Veronica, you've got 2 legs. You don't need both, right? We're going to take one.
Borrow one.
You can just hop around on the other one.
We want to give you a massage with our teeth.
All right. So now we've learned perhaps we should move the podcast to Singapore. I'll talk to Kevin about that. But what I'd like to talk about next is the marriage penalty. We've got Wendy and Carl, and we'll first talk about if they're filing and they're married, and then the same facts but unmarried. So we'll talk about that right after this break. We're in Parental Advisory.
Claudine, how would you explain the IRS to an enemy?
I would say the IRS is about truth and justice and fairness.
Now, how would you explain the IRS to a friend?
In that case, I would say the IRS is like calm waters with sharks swimming right below the surface.
Can you see the sharks?
You might.
Can you feel the sharks?
They do tend to bite.
Now, let's say you wanted to go into the water. Could you safely go into the water with the sharks in the water as well?
You could safely do it with a shark cage, say.
Now, could IRSMedic be your IRS shark cage?
It's what we do best. IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. It's what we do best.
It's what we do best. That was one hell of a spot.
It was fantastic.
That was a lot of fun. We did that yesterday. We had a lot of fun with that.
We did. We're going to have to start keeping some outtakes and just stringing them together. And those will be not safe for work. My knee-jerk reaction is swearing. All right, so we're back live on Parental Advisory talking about tax brackets. We talked about Veronica, a single mom, and how much she was going to pay in California, about $130,000. She moved to Singapore down to about $33,000. So Singapore's looking lovely this time of the year, I think.
Absolutely.
Now what we want to talk about, Anthony, is you had mentioned the marriage penalty. Excuse me. What is that about?
Well, we're going to run through it. Is that that the way the tax rates, tax brackets work is that there's rates for if you're head of household, if you're married, if you're single. Some strange things happen when you are when you're married because you can end up paying a higher effective tax rate, and this will demonstrate it.
So we should all divorce and go to Singapore. Is that what we're saying?
Kinda. I mean, if the tax code is really the tax code says, yeah, you're better off divorcing and you're better off leaving the country.
Jeez.
Right?
All right.
I mean, that's really what it does. And
Yeah.
so when people have this incredible ignorance of it and they're saying, yeah, go after the 1%. Well, you don't know what the 1% looks like and you don't know how it's affecting people right now. There's a penalty to being married. And we're going to go over there right now.
Okay.
We have Wendy and Carl James. You ever notice in movies, people always have like normal last names or first names as last names?
Yes.
But in life, names aren't as pretty.
No, they're not.
You always have like a weird name, like Parent. That's not even a... Come on.
That's a noun. That's
like a thing, right? And when I tell people, what's your last name? They'll say parrot. No, parents, like mother and father.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me. Why'd you say that? Oh, okay.
Parent, okay.
And they get it. So that's always one thing. In movies, they're always
Cool
James.
names.
And that's what, they're always cool names. Like that's Wendy and Carl James.
Yes. And again, made up names.
Made up names, but they could be real people. And they're living in San Antonio, and they are both doctors. They're married, and in our first hypo, they're going to be married.
Okay.
And they're going to have 2 kids. And combined, they're making $400,000. We split up their income a little bit so that Wendy was making a little bit more and Carl was making a little bit less. They don't have the student loan debt because they met medical school in the Air Force. We decided Air Force.
Okay.
And so they don't have those horrible student loan debts, which is typically a deduction that can phase out. And so we just wanted to show some differences there. Their mortgage is far less. San Antonio is a beautiful place. Cost of living is much, much lower. And you can still make, and that's why I think this is a fair hypothetical, because you're not going to make as much in San Antonio as in San Jose.
Okay.
So to combine, they're making $400,000, whereas it is possible that our friend Veronica could make that on her own. San Antonio, I'm sure you could. They're just not doing it now. They're on their way.
Okay.
So what we end up with is a married filing joint. Okay, they have a tax bill that actually ends up being higher than Veronica's, and there's a couple different reasons for that. They end up owing $103,911,000. Couple things going on right there. Well, and the first thing is that they are married, and they don't have as many dependents. They have 2.
Okay.
Okay, so that's boosting it up. Veronica's getting a little bit of help from there. The head of household status is helping out Veronica. The IRS is like, okay, you're a single person. We're going to give you a little bit more credit. The other thing, too, Texas has no income tax. So there's a 9% sales tax. Now, we're not accounting for that in here. California has a sales tax as well. So it's not like, they're getting you everywhere there in California.
Yeah.
But because there's no state tax, you don't get that deduction. So their federal goes up to 103. Okay. Wow. So basically, they go up a little bit there, but they're paying $30,000 less a year in taxes, even though both of them by their own are making far, far less than one Veronica.
Yep.
Now, we wanted to know what the marriage penalty was in their case. Okay, so what we did is we had Wendy file single, Carl file singles. Both of them claim one kid. We split up their income where Wendy was making $250,000 and Carl's making $150,000. We itemized deductions. We kind of split up the mortgage, property tax, all the itemized deductions, which is a fair assumption.
Okay.
We end up, this is what they end up paying when they file single, assuming no marriage penalty existed, $88,571.
Oh.
Now, if they file married filing separate, they don't get that lower rate. You have to actually be single.
Right.
So that's a marriage penalty of $15,340.
Holy God.
Yeah, I actually was surprised it was that high.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll be a couple $1,000 off.
15,000.
Yeah, $15,000 for being married. You know, and you got to think about it. It's like, wait, I thought that we decided that marriage is this sacred. thing that, you know, the state really can't go around and treat people differently.
Right.
And there it is. Single, less, married, FU.
Wow.
Yeah, that is.
And again, that's a decent salary, 200,000 each.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that's
about one's 250, one's 150. So it's
Yep.
a decent amount of money, and that's just a lot of $15,000 a year.
right.
You know, if you're able to put $15,000 a year away for your retirement,
Can you imagine?
you know that can really add up to something really nice.
Right.
And it's just the IRS takes it because you're married.
And that's it. There's no explanation. There's no basis for that. There's no.
because
That's the
if
IRS.
they started removing the marriage penalty, then there'd be a single person penalty. Well, single people are like, well, you're treating us different than the marriage people. So it's like, well, that's just the way it is. TS, go to hell. If you don't like it, vote us out. Oh, sorry, we're in power and we'll do what we want anyway. Nobody knows what we do.
Right.
That's called what it is. Nobody knows what we do.
We're making it so convoluted, you have no idea.
We operate on a whole bunch of ignorance, and we'll add more ignorance every day because you don't know. You can't keep up.
Wow. All right. So 15 grand just for being married.
That's right.
All right. So last, what we want to talk about right after this quick break is how the wealthy should pay taxes. We're going to talk about Rocky living in Naples and Stella and Frank living on beautiful Shelter Island, New York. We'll talk about them right after this. Anthony, tell me about your recurring nightmare.
It's that nightmare where you're yelling, but no words are coming out of your mouth.
I have a similar nightmare where I'm in an emergency, I need to dial 911 and my phone won't work.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. And I think I know why we have these dreams.
Why is that?
The problem with the IRS isn't just the IRS. The problem is that people don't see the IRS for the horrible risk it presents.
I think you're right. We spend so much of our time trying to warn people about the IRS, but sometimes I wonder if our words go unheeded.
But the IRS can be dealt with the right team and the right preparation.
Can IRSMedic be the right team for someone with an IRS problem?
Yes, but only if they see the IRS as a problem. IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. And we are back live on Parental Advisory talking about tax brackets. We're realizing that we should all get divorced and move to other countries. But let's see.
Or be really rich. I think that's
Yes,
lesson
I was gonna
3.
say.
Be rich.
Yes. Let's talk about some actual wealthy. You know, we talked about the first couple people, and in mine, $400,000. Veronica's wealthy, but after all the taxes, not so much. So let's talk about Rocky first. He is widowed, okay, living in Naples, Florida.
That's right. He's living in Naples, Florida, in the old Naples. It's a quick walk to the beach. It's, they have lovely public access there. Just a wonderful place to be around. And Rocky, and, this is also what you have to think about. When we asked, I said yesterday, define your definition of wealth. And people say, well, how much do you make in a year? And I say, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. Mm-hmm. That how much money do you make sitting on your dead ass around a pool?
Right. And that's what Rocky's doing.
And that's what Rocky is doing. And that Rocky, we have we put his net worth. He has a bunch of rental income, from rental properties, including his house in Naples. We're going to peg his net worth at $600 million.
600?
I'm sorry, $6 million.
Okay.
What is it?
It's Bill Gates.
Well, wow, Rocky, let me help you out there. So he's $6 million, and he's got his rental income, and we're just going to say it comes from a partnership. It's diversified. It's a bunch bunch of strip malls and various things in South Florida.
Okay.
And he gets about $400,000 from it as well. And so he's widowed. He takes a standard deduction. He doesn't bother even itemizing. So what does he have to pay per year to the IRS? Well, even though he's actually wealthy, he's got $6 million, he doesn't have to do a damn thing except deposit the check. Well, actually, they do that for him. So he's got to hire someone to run his affairs, I suppose. But with that $400,000, he should be able to get some help. So he pays less in taxes. He pays $96,615 on that because it's taxed at a lower rate. Your investment, passive real estate income is taxed at a lower rate.
Wow.
Yeah, guess who writes the tax code? Not the working staff.
Not Veronica.
Yeah, Veronica doesn't have a lobby. Unfortunately, Veronica doesn't know. Veronica's probably voting for the wrong people. And she wouldn't even entertain voting for somebody who has a different idea. Now, the thing that actually came into play for Rocky is actually his tax bill went up this year. It would have been less last year, but there was a Medicare surcharge, Obamacare Medicare surcharge on passive investment income of about $5,000. So without that Obamacare, he would have been at $88,779 on his income of $400,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and he doesn't. There's no Social Security because it's not wages.
Right.
So even though it's self-employed income, he's not self-employed.
Right.
It's just passive income, so you don't have to worry about that Medicare, Social Security. Rocky is probably collecting Social Security, the full amount. He probably is paying like, oh yeah, I just, I don't want to leave it on the table there.
Extra few $100s a month, I play poker.
And he's in Florida, which doesn't have a state income tax.
Nope.
So that's how he's able to live a little bit larger. You could say that he is one of the richest 1%, but he's not taxed at somebody who's not nearly. I mean, Veronica has a negative net worth, and she's paying a good deal more, unless she was in Singapore, than Rocky is.
And she's working hard.
And Rocky's having a hard day. Again, you go down to Tommy Bahamas, there's there's an Italian restaurant across the street. You might get bored of seeing the same people, and so that can be tiring, and you might want to venture out a little bit further than, just that walk away from your house.
It's tough.
You might want to go down to Everglades City. There they do have some gator nuggets, and you can, they taste like chicken.
If he's feeling a little wild,
and go for an airboat ride.
Yep.
Captain Randall was on our honeymoon. Eric and I went there. Captain Randall. I said, you have the best job in the world. Then he just says, it's like anything else. You get tired of it. I'm like, could you just go through?
Yeah, go.
I'm like, you work on tips, right, buddy?
I feel like Rocky would be pretty good for PPLI as well.
Rocky would be great.
Wouldn't he?
My God, you're brilliant.
I know.
You are brilliant.
It's all
right?
starting to
because I think that's way too. Because I think that's way too much to pay.
Yeah.
Because if you're 93, so out of 400, Rocky's left with just a little over 300. 90. That's a lot of money every day. If Rocky dumped that because he's really at that amount now. Actually, you know what? He's probably not insurable, but that's okay because we have that alternative private placement variable annuity. So he can get pretty much everything. The only thing he won't get is that death benefit. But by saving the taxes, he'll be able to. That's not a big deal.
Right.
Not a big deal.
And he's
There's
widowed,
really,
so not too much to worry
there
about.
Was actually the place we stayed in Naples last year. There was a beautiful. We weren't on the beach. We actually had to walk 50 yards or so, and it was hard. It was hard.
Tough.
I noticed that the breeze stopped though. The sea breeze stopped 25 yards in. I was like, that's really strange. Anyway, there was this gorgeous house that was actually beachfront.
Yeah.
And it was certainly valued $26 million, $30 million. The guy died widowed, no heirs, left it to his live-in keeper.
Shut up.
Yeah, she got it.
That's
she
awesome.
got it. But then she realized, she goes, I can't pay the property taxes on it. We're a bit.
Yeah.
So she did the smart thing, sold it, got something pretty like half as nice, which would still be crazy. And that was, so just stick in there, gals, is what I'm saying. You never know. Housekeeping could just play that long game. And I would see her out there. I remember I would see her out there. She was living there for a while.
Yeah.
And she just had like that permatan.
Yeah.
That permatan and perma smile.
I would as well.
Yep.
All right, so now let's move over from Florida to a beautiful diamond-studded Shelter Island, New York.
Oh my God, Shelter Island, New York.
Yeah, I want to look up pictures.
Oh
of
my
this.
God. So they run, and this was just on a one of those things where the story usually ends up in tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were on our jet skis and we decided to go across Long Island Sound into Long Island. To Long Island to see what would happen that day.
Wow.
And actually nothing bad happened. It just took us a little longer to find some gas to dock, a gas dock.
Yep.
They have self-service gas docks in New York. Of course, it's 89. They didn't have 93. It was
wow.
just dreadful.
It's beautiful.
And it's so gorgeous there that it's very surprising what I thought of. You look at Long Island on a map, you're thinking it's flat. You're like, oh, it's sort of flat. But as you get to it, it's just reminded me of being in some fabulous Riviera.
Yeah.
Where there's hills on both sides, and there's a ferry running from Long Island to Shelter Island, and it's only a 2.5 mile across.
Yeah.
So it looks like a wide river. It's really not a river at all. It's just the sound moving around the inlet. And those ferries are running nonstop. I heard they run like throughout the night till 4 o'clock in the morning. They're running nonstop. There's like 3 of them nonstop. So get the hell out of their way. They mean business.
Right.
So for wonderful people like Stella and Frank Miller who live at Shelter Island, they might have to wait until 4 o'clock in the morning to leave. It's one of the reasons why you might want to get yourself a boat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you can work on your own schedule. And in this hypo, Stella and Frank do live well.
Mm-hmm.
They have a net worth a little bit more. We have them at $100 million. No, I think I put them at
150.
150.
Yep.
Yes, I have put them at $150 million.
Imagine that.
Frank Frank, pretty smart guy. He did do a PPLI. He put into a PPLI with a trust. So in his case, they're worth more than anybody. You add up everybody together,
Yeah.
they're worth far more. And what Frank does is he takes loans from the PPLI against the death benefit of his life insurance policy, about $2 million,
Okay.
leaving plenty in there for growth, for capital accumulation. And he lives on that $2 million, and they do whatever they want to do, and they don't do anything with that. Now, we'll get to their taxes. I don't want to spoil it.
Okay.
Now, his wife, Stella, works at Frank's nonprofit. Frank's founded a nonprofit, and we decided in this hypothetical it would be for animals because people like animals better than people.
Yeah, they do.
So animals that are, let's see here,
Sheltered animals? No.
sheltered. There's seals.
Okay.
I think, there are seals in Long Island, and people like, whoa, what was that?
Right.
It's a seal.
All right, we're taking care of the seals?
Yeah, so Frank really cares about the seal. Stella does. So Stella works for the nonprofit, and Frank pays her. What do we have? Pays her
$80,000?
$80,000 a year. She kind of slacks off a
Yeah,
little bit, but
Seals are
and then
us.
she goes, "Well, you should pay me more." And so they have a little bickering back and forth. But overall, with the 2 million draws that Frank's doing, and then the $80,000 that Stella brings in working for the nonprofit, that's $2,080,000. So, what is their total U.S. tax liability? Are you ready for the? Do you want to guess, or you have the sheet? Do you see that?
I know,
number?
I don't see the number.
Yes, it's very small.
It is?
Do you have this sheet?
No, I don't. Don't tell me.
Okay.
$200,000 a year.
Okay. $8,051.
Shut up.
No, I will not shut up.
So I'm not supposed to say that. Sorry, Mrs. Parent.
No, right. Oh, right. My mother's least favorite swear word,
Yes.
which is not a swear word. It's just a phrase to say "shut up."
Shut up.
Yeah,
I told you I would never say shut up, so I apologize. But $8,000 a year.
$8,000 a year. $8,051.
Okay.
Okay.
The 51 could
And
break them.
The reason why, now let's go through this again. He's taking $2 million from his life insurance as a loan against his death benefit.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a loan. $80,000 of Stella is earning that $80,000.
Does it make a difference that it's not from a nonprofit organization?
That was a red herring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It's basically just her income.
Okay.
So essentially what they're taxed on is Stella's income of $80,000 a year.
Wow.
Because that $2 million loan from the life insurance death benefit is tax-free. There's no taxes on that.
Stella and Frank got it going on.
Well, they had some good advice. Mm-hmm. They had some really good...
Did they come to Parent and Wynn, LLP? So now, does it also make a difference? You have notes here that they live in Shelter Island, New York from April 15th to November 1st, and then they live in Boca the rest of the year.
Right, and I actually put another red herring in there because
okay.
I wanted them to have a little bit of this. You know what I love having is those clients who come in with like some sort of beef, and then I'm there. I like, oh, you guys don't even need to fight. You know what? You're fighting about the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. I know the answer to this one. So Frank is in this hypothetical. Frank is really worried that, oh my God, we're living in New York. We're going to have New York state taxes to pay, and also that they're maintaining a house in New York City.
Okay.
Or New York. Therefore, our worldwide income becomes taxable. There's actually this really crazy case from New York State that if you maintain a home in New York State, you're a New York resident for tax purposes, even if you're there for a week, even if you're not there, meaning your worldwide income is taxable. So one of the things you want to do if you're going to have a place in New York State, regardless of how long you're there, don't have it in your name. Because they say when you maintain a house, they actually mean like you're mowing the lawn. Like, well, if you're like, you're maintaining the house.
Is it the only state that does that?
Yeah, they're kind of crazy on that. I don't know. That was the decision a few years ago. And that was a very popular article on our blog. And it still is. People still find this can't be right. As far as I know, it hasn't been changed. And everything I say is not legal advice, subject to change. But it's a kind of crazy thing where they actually took a literal interpretation.
Yep.
There's an example of a state court ruling in favor of the state.
You know what I feel like? So the 39.6 tax bracket that we were laughing about, and we're like, there's a bunch of tax guys sitting around going, dude, I'm going to get this 39.6. And there was somebody in New York that they were out for drinks one night, and one guy was like, dude, I'm going to get this law passed. And they were like, no effing way. No way can you get that passed.
It was a interpretation. It was a judge who interpreted it.
Yep.
And they're like, well, you maintained the house. And like, but you mean because I mow the lawn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. So that's a red herring I put in there because guess what? It would matter. If Frank and Stella actually, had a typical structure where they were paying taxes, federal taxes, the fact that they were maintaining that house in Shelter Island would subject their entire worldwide income, regardless of what it's made, to New York taxes. And so they would have a New York tax bill to pay on top, regardless of their residency. So that would have been a situation where we would say, Frank, well, guess what? It doesn't matter because it's titled in you, because your Shelter Island house is titled in your name. It doesn't matter where you live. You're going to get screwed. They're going to subject you to worldwide taxation. So my first advice would be, assuming they had a bad structure and they were paying a lot of taxes, it's like, number one, do you have kids? Title in their name.
But then the kids get screwed.
No.
Oh, they don't.
You assume they're not making as much, or put it in the name of something else.
Yep.
Put it in the name of Stella. She makes $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
She's already paying New York taxes. Who gives a damn?
Yep.
And then you guys will file separate.
Okay.
There's really not a great reason why. And then I would say, then I'm like, Frank, now let's do something about your taxes. We got to lower your federal tax bill.
Right.
And so there we would look into some sort of structure, private placement, variable annuity, but he might still be insurable, PPLI, if we could do it.
I'm really starting to wrap my head around now why it pays to be wealthy. It just seems like there's so many more loopholes the more money you have. There's so many more ways.
You have
around
options. It's that's one of the things. People don't understand the way laws really work. People think laws are going to be understood, that there's this bias. There's a competency bias. Everyone is loaded with a competency bias, that they'll read something, they'll understand it. Okay, and the average person will be able to figure that out. And somebody had that quote, think of the average person. Okay, half the people are stupider than that. And that was George Carlin. I think I saw that. It's at least Mr. True. That's the way it is. You're competent. If you're listening to this, I'm just going to say it. Yes, I might be flattering us, but it's true. You are above intelligence. That you're actually listening to a podcast about taxes? Are you nuts? What is wrong with you? Really? You're listening to this. Your intelligence is by far more than anybody else. But you're walking around and you're thinking like, okay, somebody's going to pass this law. And you're thinking like, okay, this is how I would approach it. I would do some research. I would, look around, ask some researchers. I would do a search. I would go to some better sources on the internet to find out the answer, look some videos, figure it out. Most people can't do this. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to actually use Google. that when you look at, searches people actually put into Google,
Yes.
you're like, yeah, these people are the walking wounded. They are.
I love when you start typing a question and you're like, oh my God, this is what they're recommending? They always have to do with rashes and such. What is this rash on my butt?
Let me try that right now. Hold on. Let me just see. All right, I'll just start. What is this rash?
Okay.
What is this rash?
On my...
I'm not. Oh, I blocked it. I got some blocking thing, Did you get one? What is this rash? Wait, did they get rid of that? What? Oh, no. Is this rash? Okay. On my arm, on my baby, on my hand, from... What is this rash from? It's just a search. It's just a search. Luckily somebody did have a good search for that. Where skin rash, 59 pictures.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, no, don't click on images.
Right. Don't even talk.
Don't click on the
Pictures,
images.
Right. Image. I'm doing it.
All right. Well, you keep Googling your rashes there, Anthony.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus. That looks like Chen's feet.
Poor Chen. All right. So we learned today it's better to be rich.
It's better to be rich. And there's one more thing, too, is that there was another red herring, was that, so the issue of their residency, that in this hypo, Stella and Frank come to Shelter Island on tax day, April 15th, and then they leave the day after Halloween. Mm-hmm. And in my hypo, I had Stella and Frank wanting to be down in Florida for more than 6 months out of the years to establish permanent residency, and Stella not wanting to do that. And in this hypothetical, that was a red herring because Frank wasn't going to be subject to anything, but could be if he wasn't in a PPLI.
Yep.
And then it also would have been a double red herring because he maintained a home in Shelter Island in his own name, so it wouldn't matter if he was there in Florida for the majority of the year.
Got it. All right, so we're going to go off and try to get rich so we can pay less taxes.
I'm going to start my housekeeping service for elderly widowers.com.
Okay, let me go get that URL right now. All right, well, thanks for listening to Parental Advisory. Coming up, we've got some good show ideas we've been tossing around. I think I'd like to talk about the emotional effects of the IRS, how it can ruin people.
All right.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. We discussed we wanted to maybe talk about gold. Gold can be stupid.
Gold bugs. I am not a gold bug.
Nope.
There's some ways to handle gold, and there's just not ways. And by the way, most gold or all gold, I had a great quote from friend of mine. I said, oh, I think that gold is stolen. He laughed. He said, all gold is stolen.
Yeah.
That's why.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West. All right. Well, thanks for teaching us about tax brackets today, Anthony. And thanks for listening to Parental Advisory. Maybe next time we'll be broadcasting live from Shelter Island, New York. Maybe we'll take it on the road. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.